Okay, I'm just opening up the live. I'm going to just start sharing. Hoping to have a few people come up in the box. And excuse me. Settings. Let's do this grid. When the guest comes in, okay. Hi, Rad Mike. Thanks for joining. Thanks for joining. I'm just starting to set up and share the live. So if you do that, I'd appreciate that. Excellent. I'm just opening up a little bit early, try to get some tech pieces worked out before the show starts. Thank you, Mike. Or Rad. Oh, and likes. Oh, much love, much love. Excellent. Excellent. 5 people. Welcome. I hope you stick around for a little while or bounce back and forth in to the show over the next 2 hours. We're going to run for 2 hours, hopefully. Good conversation today. Hope everybody's having a good day. It's really cold where I live. It's big snow yesterday. It's a lot of we were just starting to get hopeful about spring, and yeah. Hi Treaty 6. Good to see you here. Polly Chick. Hello. There's so many people I actually know on here. It's surprising, eh? You look at it, oh, I'm following a couple thousand people. But there's some people that, you really get to appreciate a little deeper, let's say. Thank you. Share the live. Absolutely. Let's get that going and get some people in here. We're going to start the show in 6 minutes, and there's some people that want to come up for conversation. But if we don't have people right away, I'm just going to start talking. And so, yeah. Good days, still sick. Aw, listening from bed. Well, thank you for tuning in. I appreciate that. I get to enjoy my office chair today. I should have got my pillow. Yeah. So let's see, 10 people already. Excellent. Share. Let's get the likes going. Just tapping this, clapping this, as we say. I'm looking for guests to come up onto the show. And so as I see you make requests, I'll bring you up into the box. Sharing the live. Let's get it out there. I guess this would be like too much dead time. Anybody want to come on up? I forgot what the topic is today. Today we're going to talk about end-of-life care. I have a situation where I'm managing, experiencing the healthcare system for that situation. And I've also worked in end-of-life care. So I'm hoping to have, let's just say, a cathartic conversation that talks about what it's like to come into contact in this system. And I'm hoping people will share their stories, what it's like in different provinces, and just, as a way, as a way to process. MAID could be part of the conversation. I've been involved in MAID a few times. So, yeah. Will lose their subscription benefits soon. Oh, yes. Is that Progressive Moose? Hello, Mrs. Radical. Hi. Everybody start sharing and carrying and tapping and clapping. Thank you, Progressive Moose. Appreciate that. We have a guest request. Excellent. Treaty's coming up. Thank you. Thank you for joining in.
I'm just gonna join for a few minutes. I'm gonna listen all day for the whole show, but I just wanted to thank you for talking about this because I I'm an only child, right? And I've only lost my grandparents and an uncle. So I and it's that's loss you expect to experience also. So I'm really grateful that you're having this conversation because my parents are now, like, my mom will be 80 next month and my dad is 82. My mother-in-law is uh 75. So we're having some elders in our life now, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to learn from you so I can prepare in a way.
Yes, there's some great tidbits of information to share for readiness at a federal level with taxes, even, and understanding the finances. Um, one of my time spent working with seniors, financial abuse um, was something that it was just such a horrible thing and created early death. And I learned about, how people should protect their loved ones' money. And then I knew when I would see when it wasn't protected, right? And there's so many things along the way to learn about what could help your parents financially, because let me tell you, this system can suck them dry when they get into needing care, right? Their money can go away quickly. But that's part of the story, I suppose. I have a little bit of a hard edge
Well,
on.
and I'm really concerned. Like, I don't know how the quality of care is going to be if we get to that point. And my mother is a very independent woman who insists she does will never want to live with me.
Right.
So yeah, and so it's
How do
and
you?
I need to talk to them about their plans too, which is a hard conversation to have. And it's just me, and so I don't have siblings to share. Like, my husband Perry will sit with, but
Mhm.
it is a family discussion, I'm sure, that we should be having.
Yeah, and some families, they take on a lot of different shapes, and
Hmm.
some people, they help at different stages of end of life progression, let's call it, and just what kind of special needs are going to be put in place. And we have Progressive Moose joining us. Welcome.
Hey,
Hey, hi, Jana. Thank you. And for whoever's modding them up, thank you very much.
And I'm gonna step down now so I can listen
All right.
and get
Appreciate
well. Thank
care.
you for giving me an opportunity.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Anytime. Anytime. So, speaking of any time, it is 1 o'clock. So it's time to begin Beaver Politics and an episode in the navigation station. Beaver Politics is a network of um, talk shows that express Canadian politics, social justice issues, and we're on 7 days a week. And we're building a daytime list, and it's exciting times to be involved with talking about Canadian politics. Um, so just the shameless plugs. There's gift goals up in the top. There's subscriptions if you want to join and support the Beaver Network through subscription. That's an option. And you get all kinds of cool icons, and you get access to Discord. We're up on YouTube now. So that's the official kind of intro into the navigation station, which is more specifically, I like to talk about navigating systems because that's what I did as a career in social work. And um, and also I want to provide resources because that's important, the solutions, and just help people learn to to understand that these systems are political. These systems are political. So the system I've been coping with and dealing with and interacting with this week is a system that's related to end of life care. I have somebody that is going through that piece. And so I have worked with end of life care, but this week I'm experiencing it, and it has been overwhelming. Sunday night, I was making decisions about ventilators and do not resuscitate, and you know, um, those really hardcore, intense, intense, intense with family members. And then all week, kind of recovering from that event and the amount of staff interaction, the busyness of a hospital, the condition of a hospital, the condition of ER, the wonderful experiences with all the staff that we came in contact with, but just overwhelmed with everything that's going on, and understanding that the person who's, you know, affected may not be comprehending everything, and so important to pay attention to all medical pieces. And at this point, we're getting set for an end of life conversation. There's paperwork, conversation, and all of this is happening in a very short period of time. Although we've known to prep for this, when the event actually starts happening and you start engaging in a hospital system, like I was wearing my mask, right? Because, the hospitals right now, there's RBS through them all. It is just, icky to walk through the hallways listening to vomiting and puking. And, you want to shrink into your space and sanitize that space. Older part of the hospital, and, the plumbing's not working properly. You can't move quickly. And then plumbers are making noise, and then consent forms when consent may not be totally there, and how do you have those discussions in a 5-minute moment? So this is what I've been experiencing this week, and one of the things as a general practitioner, social worker in the end of life long-term care, the system doesn't allow workers sometimes to take the time that they need to help people that are processing these intense pieces of information. And nobody's born with the pieces of information. And even if you know the pieces of information, like myself, I'm not absorbing them the same way. There's too much emotion. There's too much gut fear reactions. So anyway, this has been my week, and I wanted to share it at that level here on the navigation station. And I want to talk through conversation about little pieces of end of life care that may come up. Everything from the money you can access from, like if your parents are in long-term care, for instance, how to get your taxation pieces dealt with, how to get access to, if there's a sudden illness, access to your CPP retirement funds and a lump sum. There's different things that could be tossed out in this conversation. But mostly I'm here because I want a little bit of cathartic processing through sharing my story, and hoping for people to share and to offer thoughts about our system that'll make it a kinder journey. So is there anybody that'd like to talk right away?
I'm just wondering how you're doing through this. It's a lot.
Thank you.
It's a lot going on for you, and I've been through it 4 times. The end of life process with friends or family, and it's the last time was with my husband 3 years ago. My first time was at 16 with my best friend. She was dying, and they put a lot of weight on me at 16 because she talked to me more than she talked to anybody else. So I was the one that was, whether or not to put her on a ventilator. Did she want that? Didn't she want that? That kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Too much was put on me at that age, to be honest. But and then I went through it with my mother, then with my father-in-law, and then with my husband. So it's a rough journey. and it's
Did
really
you
important for
find the
care.
system shifted from each of those experiences?
The biggest shift I can tell you I noticed is between my mom and father-in-law. They were in Ontario and they were pre-COVID.
Okay.
And I like when my mom passed away, it was about 17 years ago now. It was quite a long time ago. I was in my 30s, and I slept in her room for a month. Like they let me stay. Like I stayed at night because I had a feeling she was going to pass away at night, and I was right. I ended up being right. I was with her when she passed away. It
Mhm.
was around 2 or 3 in the morning, and they let me sleep there. They let me stay there every night with her just to make sure she was comfortable. And I just would go. I did not actually even sleep. I would go home during the day and sleep, and I'd pretty much just stay up and read at night or listen to my iPod, which was a thing back then. It was a long time ago. Um, that when my husband was sick and he was in the hospital for about a month too, um, I could only stay an hour a day because of COVID. Now they did bend the rules for me a lot, but I couldn't kind of move in the way I did with my mom. That was just not something that was possible. Or it was the Alberta system is different than Ontario. I'm honestly not sure. COVID changed everything, right? And yeah, they just wanted less people around for obvious reasons.
You bring up a
And
really interesting point, Jana, with that. Just because the standard for palliative care actually
mhm.
was designed and published in 2020. Any guesses as to why they're revisiting that again now in terms of standards for that area? COVID definitely has played, like they're actually working through this process right now. They should have a new health standard for palliative care as of
Mhm.
sometime next year as well too, just because of that. I just wanted to throw that in there because I think that you raise a really excellent point.
Yeah, because it was not just for my mom. Like it was helpful for my mom to have someone there, but it was also helpful for me in my journey to be able to be there with her. Because it was really important to me. Whereas with my husband, he passed away about a half an hour before I got in one day. Um, and I don't blame the system for that. COVID was COVID. I mean, they did the best they could. It's really too bad that it happened. But I understood it, but I think that a system where you can spend more time with your loved ones is definitely better. So let's hope we can get back to that. Yeah.
I have the palliative care system that I've worked with is excellent.
Hmm.
Excellent
Good.
teamwork, excellent communication between, the actual hospice services outside of hospital and home support now for people to pass away with dignity at home.
Hmm.
Those services are, I know they're available in my community. However, with our system, the I live in like I live in sort of, there's 180 or 90,000 people in my community, and we launch into the north, let's say. But if you go outside the city limits, then the health authority services disappear. And there's a lot of people that live outside of the city limits that we need to give support for in this
Hmm.
end of life care, um, you know, system that exists, and it's morphing and changing because dying with dignity has become a big part of the conversation in terms of the advocacy work. Maybe Coffee and Research, you might have probably more to say on that.
Hmm.
It's definitely, there's a lot to be said there, both from I will say it is a touch beyond my scope, so there's only like I do have my limitations in terms of where I can talk about that from an expertise standpoint. But there is clearly a need to consider what sort of a standard is set. Like that, there are expectations when it comes to people being trained and certified to make sure that they can walk through this process. But still, from a disability rights standpoint, there are a number of concerns that have been raised on a regular basis that haven't always been well received in this conversation. It would take like 5 TED Talks to kind of go through exactly all of the details associated with that. But in terms of that standard, what's kind of as we move forward in the culture changes that have happened over the last 5 years, what's interesting about the 2020 national standard that we've had for palliative care is that was originally just set out specifically about end of life care, and how that is shifting now is actually more of a focus towards a lifespan approach, and the fact that palliative care isn't necessarily about quantity of life, but about quality of life. So that's something that can be days, weeks, years. In fact, in that case, I was lucky enough in pediatrics with my son to have that pediatric palliative care for about 7 years. So it's a standard that I'm hoping will really shift how we begin to talk about that, but also from a regional standpoint as well too. Like you said, behavioral politics about some areas of provinces not having access. We need to think about what it means to be surrounded by community. I have a friend, for example, who was in pediatric palliative care in Grand Prairie, which is like really super north in Alberta, for example. And that came with a variety of considerations and limitations as well too. So there's a lot of conversations to be had here that I'm very hopeful about personally.
Yeah, yeah. I see the when the system really clicks, and um, just a couple of years ago, I mean, I was working with they were training end of life doulas to be able to have a much like a midwife, a doula baby birth, but for an end of life, so that person can be part of the team that may need, there may be medical supports or whatever it is for the person to be able to pass away with dignity at home. And I'm pretty sure that was a provincial thing. Although I'm in British Columbia, there was somebody had reached out to us from Ontario that were wanting to write proposals and to get this kind of training on the go in Ontario. And that's an amazing thing, right? And people might not know that some of those services exist within our systems. The hospital system experiencing that this week, the busyness of that system. We have a university hospital here, so the amount of students running through, all of a sudden it'd be like, you know, 3 nurses for insulin, 3 nurses for blood work, 3 nurses for physio, 3 nurses for OT, the actual doctor or the actual resident or the janitor or the food person or the plumbers. Like, what a busy fucking place, man. It's not about rest. It's not about rest sometimes. So that was that was something, that needed a constant bit of advocating to keep under control. I don't know where I'm going to be a little all over the place because I'm so emotional from all of this stuff. So please forgive me at a time about, some of the look at exit stage right on a conversation. Let's invite, how about you, Progressive Moose? Did you want to join the conversation?
Yeah, I was actually going to say, you were just speaking on Ontario. Um, so my experience at when it comes to this sort of stuff is through my father who passed in October. Um, long story short, he was in and out of the hospital for a while before they actually figured out what was going on. And by that time, it was too late, and all they could do was essentially make him comfortable moving forward. So here in Ontario, one thing I will definitely give credit to when it comes to healthcare and the workers more so is they really have stepped up, and I realize there's probably things put in place through the system, but the workers themselves really made it possible for my father to be at home and be more comfortable within his own space for the time that he had left. Um, and it really goes to show with ingenuity, especially here in Ontario, with how utterly underfunded our healthcare has been. There's still enough to be able to at least like like stated earlier to give the people the dignity that they deserve and want in those final moments. So with the rest of it crumbling, at least they're able to do that. And they really they organize with each other fantastically. And I think if it wasn't for the resources in terms of PSWs and registered nurses and the whole team that was showing up to the house to help with my father's care. It really, like, if it wasn't for them and how organized they were together, it wouldn't have been able to happen that way. So kudos to everyone involved, especially when you're helping somebody in that situation. My hats off to all of you.
Hmm. Loss and grief is a complicated issue, and it kicks into play even before the loss occurs. It can be complicated, especially, when the long-term care work, there were so many uh, seniors who had no family. And sometimes there was really valid reasons why those family members weren't there. And our system stepping in to take care of somebody who's been, let's just say, has no contact, like literally not a person outside a facility. It is, it is a privilege when people can come together. And believe me, community comes together, right? In the nursing support system within the healthcare authority. That community exists with, but not necessarily with family members, for sure. Well, I'm sorry to hear about your dad. That's fresh too. November is, or in the fall is not that long ago, and I'm sure, I'm sure that I'm not sure anything, but it ebbs and flows. The-
Yeah, and I mean, I just bring it up because I mean, hopefully we see across the board, like I said earlier, like provincially, kind of. Hopefully, we can see all provinces be on the same level in terms of that, where at least, bare minimum, make sure we can give everything we can in those final moments without too much of a hassle and rigmarole, for lack of better words.
Was your dad actually in long-term care?
He was not, like I said, unfortunately, like he just wanted to be at home.
Be it
Like,
all the way through it. Okay.
yeah, and that's what they did their best to do. So.
In the long-term care system, when someone gets a room, it's like a tenancy agreement. It's actually, the same legal laws as a landlord and tenancy agreement. And if they don't want to live there, they can make, and they have the ability to say, then they don't have to live there. And I've seen people move out of long-term care and back into community so they can have, you know, um, more, more of a, dignity in their life, quality over quantity, that kind of thing. And a lot of people think once you're in there, that's it, you're in there. And that's not the truth. And our system has started to understand it's more expensive. Um, and so it's better for the person emotionally, it's better for the family, it's better for community if you could just put those supports in at home, put them in at home, and be done with all this fucking capitalism around healthcare. You must be, I mean, Ontario, the horror stories out of there through COVID and long term care. I was grateful to be in British Columbia.
Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely. That was quickly just, and I'll give it up. That was one thing I've pointed out plenty of times now with during COVID, how our armed forces actually stepped in a lot of facilities because they were understaffed, underfunded, didn't have the resources because of the private healthcare system and for profit, essentially. Um, so,
So this week, I am appreciating our public healthcare system. We didn't have to pay for any medications. We didn't have to pay for occupational therapy, for physiotherapy, paying for all the different services, that, like the nursing services, the man, I just, the amount of professionals, the social workers, yes, the social workers, they came up, gave us the home support team, how to connect with that team within the authority. The social workers can help you if you're struggling with parking. The parking machines at our hospital are just down all the time, or they won't accept your credit card or your debit, or it's just a friggin' nightmare. And I got a ticket anyway. They took care of the ticket and gave me some free parking. But little things like that, so you don't have to worry about whether or not you're going to get a ticket while you're up and you can't leave the room, kind of thing. So social work's an important. They help you to link to resources in the community, and maybe somebody just needs some clothes too. Lots of things that they do. So we got to connect with that professional team this week, and it turns out I graduated with the person that was working there. That's happened to me now. That has happened to me now 3 times now, where I've come in contact with the people that are still working. So I'm on disability that I graduated with, and the way that they supported me to help me navigate the system, because it changes all the time. But it was so good to know those people. But I gotta say, it was also very make you face your truths around how my life has shifted with accepting disability in my life, and give sort of shifts in career. But anyway, another bird went by, I suppose. Canadian, you've been waiting a while. Do you want to chime in on a piece of conversation?
Sure.
No.
Hi there.
Hi.
I lost my dad a couple of years ago. I'll be going on 3 years in June. And I had been living in like down southern Ontario, and he was when we found out he was his cancer had progressed. I said, okay, well, I'm gonna move closer to them so that someone's kind of there, because my mom she's got mobility issues and stuff, so so it was good to be there. And then he ended up having a stroke because he was losing blood volume, and they went and made him do a colonoscopy, and that night, because he had to be off of blood thinners, he had a stroke. So anyway, long story short, he passed away within a couple of weeks, and then we were just kind of taking care of my mom, and my brother lived in Sudbury, so we're about 5 hours away, so he was coming up a lot, and I'm on disability, so not for anything physical. I had a brain thing, so anyway, I can handle so much, and then I started to realize that I'm getting a little burnt out. So I went to some support groups like Caregiver, and then a grief one. And then I said to my brother, I don't think I can do this on my own anymore. And now I feel really kind of bad because we brought my mom and myself back to Sudbury. She's in a retirement home. I have a huge guilt for doing that. It's not because now there's a huge outbreak in there, and nobody can see her, and it drives me insane. But anyway, what wasn't really my point was, sorry, I'm just kind of babbling.
Okay. It's all good. We're hearing you, and you're sharing your babbling with me, because I was good. And that's, like one of the things we've talked about on Beaver Politics this week with different shows, people coming in to express their fears about the existential threat we're all freaking living under politically, and where do you go that you get to express that? Where are you going to find your room of empathy for your social problem? And the social problem could be, that we could lose our country, kind of thing. And there's not always, safe space for that. And this show here is also going to provide that today. And understanding how people tell their stories is you know, how you experience it emotionally, and it isn't always a straight line. So I thank you for all that, for sure. I'm not sure who was up next, Marcy or Desiree, because I wasn't popping you up into the boxes. So whoever did that, Mrs. Radical or Treaty Six, thank you for helping me moderate. Uh, Desiree, would you like to go? Would you have some comment?
Yeah. I think this particular discussion needs to be had more often and at much younger ages. And I
Absolutely.
say that because my mother signed her DNR when I was in my 30s. It was a decision she made. We always knew because when we were kids, I remember her quite clearly saying to us, if she is in a state where she can't take care of herself or make her own decisions, she wants the plug pulled. That blatantly. So when she told me, I think I was 34, that she signed a DNR, going back to Moose's point, it was a shock. And I had to kind of reconcile with the fact that at the time, because my mother and I still had a relationship, that she's not immortal, you know, but she made these decisions so that we didn't have to, right down to signing the paperwork to donate her body to science. And they take care of all the cremation and all of that stuff. So we were always kind of prepared as much as you can be prepared before the actual event, that this is what she wanted. And we need to have these conversations with our friends and loved ones and parents and ask them while they still have the decision, the choice to make that decision, what they want. How do they envision their last, weeks or days or months or whatever it is, so that they feel empowered, that it's their decision instead of all this flurry happening around them. And they might be getting bits and pieces of it, but they're not really comprehending what's going on, And I know, like, the history on my dad's side of the family, they all pass away in their late 50s, early 60s. I'm 62, so I've become hyper aware that I need to get my ducks in a row so that, heaven forbid, if I go before my husband, he doesn't have to make those decisions on top of everything else.
In understanding the system, when there's actually like a legislated hierarchy of who is next in line in terms of decision making when someone doesn't have the ability to make consent.
Yeah.
But having prepared a power of attorney and a will and those kinds of documents, they're living documents. They're living documents that can be made like as soon as possible, So,
Yeah.
and
I worked in healthcare and have had to prepare those documents for patients in the clinic.
Mhm.
And even though I don't know them on a personal level, when I get handed those documents to scan into their chart, it's still a shock, even for me, that somebody is thinking about this and preparing for this. You don't really think about, you go through work, the work that I did, and when that comes across your desk, it kind of straightens up your world a little bit.
Mhm.
Where how you're looking at things, and it's a reminder that you could run out of time at any moment for any reason.
It's a lot of people don't like to think about those realities, but those who do and prepare, that's a gift. Like what your mom did and all that preparation for what she was aware of some things, and But even not. I know lots of people who just do the preparation, even though there's no illnesses. There's just
Right.
we just gotta understand that everybody could be hit by a bus tomorrow, and so it's good to have some of those planning documents. But
My
sometimes you don't get the whole picture, so and it doesn't have to cost thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars to lawyers. You can do self help to get through most of it. You can download will kits for free. You can just go and pay a court fee to register your document. You don't need to have a lawyer go register it for you.
Right.
You can prepare your own power of attorney with um, the term leaves me. They also, help you to buy mortgages and stuff and sign off on the paperwork.
Yeah. My niece did not take it when she found out. She did not take it as a gift, because as per my mother's instructions, she wanted to be spread amongst the rose garden at UBC.
Mm-hmm.
And, my niece was kind of like really upset because there's no headstone,
Okay.
and that's kind of, I can see her being upset, but everybody who's close to me, I've told them the best way to celebrate me is go do the things, go to the places I loved. That's where you're going to find my spirit. Go to the mountains, go to the Badlands. Remember, I loved those places.
Just in this last year, not my son has been involved in 2 living funerals, where the person, it was all above water, and like there was no denying what was coming, and it was described as such an amazing event with sharing last memories and creating this last memory opportunity together with people. Isn't that beautiful? I found that so beautiful. I found that very beautiful. Yeah. I want to give Shmarshi an opportunity to talk. Yeah.
Okay. Hello, everybody. How you doing?
Hi, welcome. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me here. Yeah, I've already talked to my dad about it. I haven't really talked to my mom about it, but I don't want to be buried. I just want to be there. They have this thing where you can be cremated and put into a little tree and planted, and that's what I want to do. And that's what I've come to the realization of is because at the end of the day, you're just gonna, and it sounds so morbid, and it's gonna sound morbid coming out of my mouth. At the end of the day, you're just gonna become worm food, and you're not gonna exist anymore. And it doesn't serve a purpose for me personally to be buried in the dirt. I just want to be a tree. I just want to give oxygen like the trees gave me oxygen, right? It's a circle of life in my opinion. And I've told my dad, I said, if God forbid I get any illness, do not I do not want life-saving procedures done because at the end of the day, if I'm gonna go, I'm gonna go. And that's the only thing I have to look for, right? Is I live my life. I've been on this earth. I've been great. I've been blessed with so many wonderful people. It just doesn't make sense to have a big out to do, you know, put me in the ground and people. I don't want people to mourn for me when I'm gone. I want people to show me that they're there for me now. There's a saying that says, "Don't cry for me when I'm gone. Make sure you know I'm there, or you're there for me when I'm here." Right? Because at the end of the day, we all know who's going to be there for us at the very end of our life. And that's what I want people to understand. I don't want people to cry for me when I'm gone. I want people to celebrate me. I don't want people to sit there and be like, oh, well, you can't do this. You have to do this. No, my plan is my plan. And I've told my dad this, and I don't think he understood. And again, with the medical issue, my dad was supposed to have back surgery a few years back, actually. And 2 weeks before the surgery was planned, my dad was getting everything prepped. The doctor called him and said, "Sir, we can't do your surgery. You're going to have to just deal with the pain on your own." And he's 67, he's 68 this year.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that was like he slipped. He lost his footing on a property that he was working on, and he fell on his back, and he really like wrenched it and did some major damage. But it like, what cost? What? My thing is, why would the doctor get my dad's hope up of having some relief and then pull the rug underneath of him and say, "Sorry, we can't help you." You know, that to me was like a dick move, in my opinion. Like,
You've said a whole lot, and it really sounds like you've spent a lot of time thinking about what your end of life wishes would be. And I've seen so many experiences where if that's not put in writing, the wishes of the person, because it sounds like you're very, like, this is important to you. I want it to go down this way. I don't want to be worm food, as you put it. I want to be the growth of a tree and be a part of that circle of life. But if you will have, if you can find somebody that you can entrust your end of life wishes, but you could put that down in writing and make that something that, if it's important to you, gets respected along the way. I just want to, just because of the time, it's time for me to say we got gifts in the corner. Capping is clapping. Tap, 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 tap. Let's see, we're at 10,000 likes. More likes, the more algorithm. We're 12, 14 people in the room. It's been pretty steady here, but if we start sharing, and if you just press like on my forehead kind of thing, apparently you can share by a great big list. And we offer subscriptions, and you can support our Beaver Politics Network with subscriptions to get Discord. And don't forget, we're on YouTube. So we're uploading to YouTube if you ever want to get caught up on a show. Last week, I didn't have a whole lot of people in the room, but it was on the EI system. So if there's questions about that and employment counseling and walking a journey that way. Anyway, so like go back and have a look at some of the Beaver Politics episodes on YouTube. Anyway, I don't want to lament about that, but this has been really great conversation, I must say. It is important, and there's so many, you're protecting your dad. You're feeling probably very wounded, probably. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it must hurt to know that the rug's been wiped out from underneath them. And your comment about why a doctor would do that. Sometimes doctors are at the mercies of the system, and sometimes understanding the power that your doctor may or may not have can help bring you, alleviate some of the conversation that you might be, is this really is this because of the doctor? And if it is, then maybe there's a way to remedy that. And if it isn't, what's the real problem for why the rug got pulled out? So I've seen doctors, they have to, there's rules. There's rules that they can't order a test unless this previous test has been done. They, trying to hook you up with public services. Housing's the biggest social dynamics of health. Housing's one of the biggest issues. Doctors can't fix that. Doctors, they release someone from hospital with a care plan that the person needs housing and home support. Yeah, okay. There you go.
yeah, that makes sense. I mean, it's unfair, I guess, is the way I'm looking at it. I mean, it sucks, yeah. He's dealing with it. He's not too much in pain. I mean, I'm just gonna try and figure a way to help him out relieve that pain because I don't like seeing him like take medication. I've told him the medication he's putting in his body is just it's not doing him any good. So I'm trying to
Well, if he's of sound mind and making
yeah.
choices about his medications, sometimes we have to support people we love when they make choices we don't agree
Oh
with.
yeah.
In a big piece of my week, actually, with the person making choices that is going to ultimately speed along that end of life process, and nobody can talk about it in a way that's, we have a lot of side conversations about it, right? Like even coming here, I don't want to be like, you gotta be careful not to identify and stuff like that, but those conversations, they take place, and And then how do we support each other with the intensity of those conversations? It's incredible. That's what I have found to be, and I love to talk and everything, but those conversations they just drain you by the end of a day.
Oh,
Or
they do.
sorry, Progressive, have you got?
Uh, yeah, just in terms of, on the thought process of kind of preparing for everything. Like my mother, thankfully, is still around, but had quite the bad luck for a while when it came to brushes with the end, for lack of better words. And you know, afterwards, all the different conversations that we actually ended up having, you know, yes, it's hard to have them, but she realized at that point it was time to really start thinking about everything. So she's, did everything she's needed to do. She's taking care of her own headstone and where she's going to be laid at the end. Took care of all that, which, of course, me telling her, she didn't have to worry about that. We would have taken care of it. But it's the stuff that if you're willing to look forward, and can be hard sometimes, whether it's yourself or a family member, to have that conversation, have those thought processes. But in today's world, it really is something that if you're able to do it and you're able to make it through the emotions of it, it's really important and really should be a priority once you get to a certain point. I mean, I'm 36 and I'm already starting to think, well, maybe I need to start thinking about this sort of stuff just in case, right? So,
Yeah, yeah, helping people to prepare that kind of paperwork. And there's some big move, like I've sort of been involved in some community, well, working within an Indigenous agency where there's sort of like a group effort, a community effort to make sure that their elders are protected because of the amount of money that has come along and the abuse that's come along. And I mean, I've seen lawyers steal money, and it is, the need for the public guardian and trustee to be more involved, and people not understanding what a public guardian and trustee can do so that somebody doesn't abuse a person financially. I had a fella one time, and he was, there was some deficits, but was receiving like over $250,000, and coming in saying, "Hey, I want to buy my so and so a skidoo and so and so," like it, and just spending money like crazy. And we were working to try and get the public guardian and trustee involved so we could protect that money. Because the vultures were waiting. But the public guardian and trustee, people have to have money, because if you just exist on pension, the public guardian and trustee don't, because they charge like a 1 or 2% in order to case manage your financials. So some people don't qualify because they don't make enough money, and those people really fall through the cracks, because who does control the money if there's no power of attorney, right? And they're needing to be in long-term care, and there's a lot of T's to cross and I's to dot on some of those cases. But the public guardian and trustee is a service if you're worried about helping to protect a loved one's finances while you go through end of life process journeys and just end of life preparation. Power of attorney is an interesting document. It's not just about finances. Power of attorney also has a huge section for medical decision making. And that document, filled out with consent of the people involved, and that is a living document, and people, you might get in a fight with somebody and you don't want them making your medical decision anymore. You have the right to go in and change your mind about things along the way. And some people have, they fear if they put something in writing that way, they're stuck with it. They'll never, so they hesitate about moving forward with the financial, with putting it in writing and making it official in the court systems, maybe even, registering a will. But for those who don't do those kind of pieces, then there's a hierarchy, like I said, that the government establishes. So, your spouse would be next in line, and then, the different children according to age, and then, a sibling or a cousin, that kind of a thing, right? All the way down to the public guardian and trustee who could be making medical decisions for a person in terms of life support. And what a hard decision to make in the moment. I know in the situation I'm in, we knew this was coming. So those paperwork pieces were done a few years back. But here we are in the moment living it in trauma. Like we hadn't done all that and hadn't prepared ourselves. And then realizing, oh my, it's just a flood of it all. It's just a flood of it all. And having, 3 or 4 different people telling you the same message. And I appreciate that, because one person said it the right way, and it all kind of the light bulb moment hit when we've been given the same message probably multiple times that evening. So that part, I'm going to allow myself space. I'm going to allow myself that it's okay to have gone, to have had those emotional responses, because as you get older, you learn to rein that in too. You have this thing called coping skills, right? And you have this matter of factness about it, that we got a fucking adult, and that's just the way it is. We got to move on here. We got to make these decisions. The decisions happen. It's like pregnancy. You don't make a decision, you're making a decision, right? And so it's about being able to engage and step in boldly where you can, and hopefully you have a support system. This is piece of my support system right here this week. But I'm also lucky to have other sisters and people that love our person, and I'm going to get support there as well. Mrs. Radical, all the beavers. Thank you all for joining today. Anybody else want to chime in and tell some?
Yeah, I just want to touch on my ex was diagnosed officially with frontal lobe dementia while we were still together. Now, he had always exhibited this behavior, but the last couple of years we were together, he was spiraling, right? Got scammed out of $70,000.
Aw.
Yeah, and trying to get stuff in place was really difficult. There were a lot of different mechanisms, and then he up and went back to Louisiana, which kind of, for me, was kind of a relief, because then I didn't have to deal with it. It was a lot between going to the seniors clinics, and I got an appointment with a psychiatrist out of a clinic that I worked with.
Mm-hmm.
And if anybody knows about that, the frontal lobe dementia, when they say something, they believe it, even if it's not true.
Mm-hmm.
So that the whole process, when you've got somebody who's got something like frontal lobe dementia, that is a struggle that
Well, frontal lobe is
nothing
where all the
prepared
reasoning
for.
takes place. Frontal lobe
Right.
is your ability to, see what's true, what's not true, sort your facts out, make your,
It can hit as young as 45 years old.
Oh, yes.
And trying to get his family involved, even from a distance, they knew him as that behavior for a long time. Like, he was in his 60s.
Mm-hmm.
So if I, would call, and they didn't believe me, because they saw it as normal behavior out of him, not what it was. So yeah, once he left, it, as bad as it sounds, it was a relief. I didn't have to deal with it anymore, you know.
Is that
And
not part of the complicated grief too? Because sometimes it's just a layer of guilt from the relief. And but allowing ourselves and that space. It sounds like you've been able to get there, but it is hard though. It's not that easy to just not have.
there were other things that I was there that I had to face before he left. You know, he was also a narcissist, so there were processes that I was already going through. You know, and I at that point when he had been lying, bold-faced lying, and he knew he was lying because he would double down on the lies with the doctors. I hit my wall and I was done. You know, so that's where the relief comes in. Is like, okay, now I don't have to deal with any of this anymore.
Yeah, so some behaviors weren't necessarily disease related,
Right.
right? And so sometimes it's hard to separate, or the thing is, you always got to be constantly on edge and always having that conversation so you're aware of how to separate them. It's
Yeah.
exhausting.
Yeah. And it was exhausting, you
I
know,
can see that.
and but there, like, I went through the grief before he actually left.
Yeah, I've seen. Yeah, I can appreciate that. When you were saying about, okay, so he was younger, experiencing all this dementia, frontal lobe atrophy, perhaps for whatever reason. You can have atrophy, like alcoholism. One of the phenomenons hitting our long-term care health authority is the younger, as this happens more with men, but the Alzheimer's, dementia, the hardening of the frontal lobes because of alcohol happening in the 50 to 60 range as being more and more and more common. And the hard part about managing this problem is that if it's an alcohol driven dementia, when the person sobers up, the facility is not the place for them. The facility is designed for end of life care. And then you have somebody who's physically fit, who just has dementia during these alcohol phases, which could be quite long, right? And they're causing harm to themselves or harm to the community. So they do not have a place to house this particular problem. And they have been putting people in lockdown units in long-term care centers. Long-term care centers are not necessarily happy about this because it can be quite dangerous when someone wants out of a lockdown unit when they've committed no crime, when they are no longer experiencing dementia because alcohol has left their body. What do you do? That's the ethical dilemma. How is the system going to cope and manage those situations? And that group is growing. That group that's going into that dementia piece is growing.
I would pull it back even further. And the difficulty is getting that person to accept they need to go to the doctor in the first place.
Right.
Well, usually they end up at emergency through ambulance because like of self-harm or harming to others, and police, RCMP will be involved, but they are in a total psychosis. And because they stay there in that space for a while, the legal system, the doctors, in order to hold them, have to fill out what's called a Form 4 in our province that gives them the right to hold them within facility legally. But there's a time limit on it, and the time limit can be a weekend, and the time limit could be 30 days or 60 days, and I've seen the time limit extend into, let's just say, over a year.
Oh,
and
wow.
That is not, once you're in facility, you have no access to alcohol, like this, and you're in the lockdown unit, and this person, like, nobody in that could communicate, because in the lockdown unit in long-term care, there's often, people are flight risks, let's say, or they need extended nursing services, and they may need help to eat. They may need incontinence issues. They may not be able to communicate. And so if you can't go out and have a conversation with somebody because their dementia is so advanced in a lockdown unit, and here you are, 55 years old, fully functional, what do you do? I mean, just the odors in those places can be quite
Triggering.
something to accommodate, and being able to have relationships with people who can't talk, don't know who you are, won't remember you, in
Yeah.
5 minutes kind of thing. So what an interesting situation.
Just one more point that I'm always hyper aware of in the situation that I was in with my ex is he was a black man,
Mhm.
and the medical racism that still happens in our system, I was also hyper aware of, so you tread a little bit differently when trying to get somebody help.
Oh, and there's no right or wrong in a lot of the way we move forward. And, that's part of the healthy healing that we do to move ourselves forward, is those ethical decision makings in the moments, your protective decisions that you have to make, self-preservation along the way. Sometimes it's, you just do it. Sometimes, what they say, better to ask forgiveness than permission.
Yeah.
We need to be kinder to ourselves, because it's not always about right or wrong. There's a lot of gray area in these ethical decision makings around end of life care, and many layers of the loss and grief aspects around them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
May I say something quickly?
Yes, Marshy.
Um, it struck me when you were talking about palliative care, and my grandmother was in palliative care, and I had talked to my dad and my mom and some of my aunts. I'm like, why don't we try THC oil? It's the worst we can try. The worst we can do is not have any relief for her, because I was seeing the medications she was on, I was seeing how she was feeling, and I did my research on THC oil, and I know what the effects it has. I know what they use it for. She had lung cancer. They had did surgery. They found a spot, and so forth and so forth and so forth and on and on. Um, they they're like, no, no, that's a controlled substance. We can't do that. I asked the doctor at the palliative care unit, or the nurses, I'm like, what are the chances of us using THC to get this somewhat manageable and maybe relief a little bit? And they're like, that would be great, but your family's against it. And I'm like, why are we not doing this? Because I'm sitting here watching this, and it was like an internal fight with my family, and I'm sitting there and I'm like, okay, you know what, you guys want to do what you want to do. She passed away. It's sad. It's still sad. But I'm like, you guys could have given her a little more time, or even a chance to fight this with one drop of that oil. And all you guys were like, no, 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 she needs the medication that the doctors are giving her, and da 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 da. And I'm like, you know what? I drop my hands, because I'm not going to sit here and fight a battle that I'm not going to win when I've done my research and I know what it can be good for. And my mom, a couple of years before, like a couple of years after this, I was taking CBD oil, and my mom's like, "What are you taking?" I'm like, "CBD." She goes, "Why?" I'm like, "Because it helps." And she's now experiencing the use of CBD oil. She goes, "Huh, I wonder what would have happened if Grandma would have taken this." I'm like, "Well, I guess we'll never know now." Like, I wasn't trying to be
You know,
condescending.
do you know who Pixie Lee is? Our beaver, Pixie Lee.
Yes, yes,
Okay, so Pixie Lee did like 10 years advocacy for legalization of cannabis, and she has a podcast
yeah.
about the topic you're talking about. But once you have a lot of knowledge and you want to share that to make your loved one, have a better quality of life, I want to share a story about, a friend of mine. They lived their lives as vegans, organic, very healthy lifestyle. And when cancer came and took took one of them, the other person took all. I remember, like, it was a book burning party. These books lied to us. They lied to us. We did everything right, and they felt very betrayed by the knowledge that they had that ultimately did not shift. End of life with this person passing away. And so, you know, what works for one person may not work with another, and all that kind of stuff. But it is, I think what's important from your story is that you just genuinely cared about this person and wanted them to have the kind of relief that you were experiencing, right?
And you know what's interesting about that area of pain science as well too is that we have the progress has been painfully slow. We had a same clinical definition of pain since 1979. That was the year I was born. And that was only changed, I think it was 2021 or 2022. And in that point, it's now considered that you are an accurate reporter of your own experience in that way. Palliative care has begun to really catch up on that. But as like a common cultural community-based knowledge about that, we haven't had nearly enough conversations that we should.
Oh,
But that's
yeah.
a huge conversation in and of itself. But it's an important one. So if you check out the IASP definition of pain, you can learn more about that as well too.
And that's exactly. And my grandmother passed away in 2012, and this was 2018. And it was just like, now my mom is okay with using gummies. And I'm like, why is it okay for you to use gummies? But, and I had this conversation. My mom's like, you're getting condescending. I'm like, no, I'm not. See, what you're saying is, what's good for you may work, but what's not good for grandma wasn't okay. So it sounds kind of hypocritical. And I was trying to break it down so I wasn't like being condescending. I was trying to give her an example, and she wouldn't, and like she was so stuck in her ways. She didn't understand it. And I was like, okay, I'm not having this conversation anymore. I'm done. Like this conversation is just done. And I
Sometimes
left it at that.
shift people, right? Like sometimes we can't shift people. And so we need to love them where they're at. And we need to, like, I can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink.
Yeah.
People who deal with addictions, we don't want our loved ones to die from any addiction, right? But you can help them with all kinds of information, all kinds of resources and tools. And if they still choose to engage in their substance, it doesn't mean that you haven't done, your very best. It's about loving them and meeting them where they're at, setting boundaries to make sure you don't get lost in that along the way, right? So it's looking at something like the cannabis. Did you say the gummy use for your grandmother? Would
Anything
it
at
have
that point.
would it have shifted her being able to stay longer? Probably not.
No. Well, no.
Probably not. So, you know, you got to keep up the fight and if you want to know more about pain, if that's particularly interesting, I think what Coffee and Research just said, there's actually like ways to kind of measure this to make sure that you are dealing with right. And like I said, link into Pixie Lee and make
Oh, I
sure that
will.
all that, all that knowledge kind of jives. But
No, I definitely will do that, and I'll definitely have to check out Coffee's content. Because, I mean, now we're in what, 2025, and it's been legal for what, 8 years, I think?
yes.
8 years it's been legal, and now I'm gonna have to show my dad, like, hey, I know you don't want to do that, but maybe this might relieve your pain a little bit. We can figure ways out, because he doesn't take prescribed medication. He takes Aleve and Advil and all those, and he tried all the bells and whistles. And I'm thinking if I can get him on a pain level management without using Western medicines and over-the-counter like things, maybe that might be a little better for his system. I don't know. I'm going to talk to him about it because I would really like to know if he's interested.
That's the key.
I'll
You
make him my guinea pig.
talk to him. It's his right. It's his right to
Oh
refuse.
yeah,
His right to consent. Right. That's the most important. He has a right. Like we always the we had a human rights code that we
yeah.
would fall back on to make sure that no overstepping takes place. I mean, you have the best of intention to. Sorry, there's a lot of noise happening here somewhere. Anyway, the
Oh
best
yeah.
intention um, to give him pain relief. But I'll tell you this: as I age, and I don't know how old you are, Smarshy, but the more I age, the less I want to take pain medication. I would rather just live with the pain, learn to cope with it in a different way, and sometimes it could be a meditation thing, or nothing, or maybe I'm just tolerating because medication can make people feel, and so can CBD. Like I can understand why your dad might be hesitating on any new conversation. He knows what he knows.
Right.
So, come here and get vent it all out, because that's what you should do.
Right.
Vent out your frustration that you
And see,
can't
the
get
thing
him to
is,
do it,
my dad.
that you think is the best course of action. But respect his choice, whether
Oh,
it.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I would never force my parents or anyone to do something that I would do. I just
Yeah.
give them the information that I have. And my dad is such a sucker for me, he'll try anything. Like, I'm the only girl biologically, my sister, my brother, and he listens to me more than he listens to those two. So it's that thing of my dad will try anything once, and
Mm-hmm.
if it doesn't work, it's that's that. We don't push boundaries with medication and stuff like that. So I
Yeah.
think that just
That's
just I think
but
giving
you
him the
keep
best information I can, right?
Yeah, you keep that trust between you two, and then he's going to open up to you more potentially, right,
Yes.
about the level of pain. Because I have often, like, on a scale of 1 to 10, and people are saying like 5 when they're 8, 9, because or they're and of course there's always people who will abuse it. I'm a 10 when you're 5, but it's important to get people to understand, like what Coffee and Research says about understanding what pain levels are and stuff. You got to be able to assess, and there's lots of tools online. I think the Googles will probably help you with that too, to get some assessment tools to help understand how he views pain, right?
Yeah.
What
Well, it's also different from one person to another, like you and
Do you have
Coffee had said,
siblings?
right?
Do you have siblings that will be helping with the care?
No, not so. Like I have siblings, but my brother is also a big gummy person. My sister is my sister. I don't know how she feels about this, but I haven't really talked to them about it because like I'm closer to my dad than my mom, right? So we have that a connection, I guess. We think on the same wavelength. And my dad, he's always been like a chill kind of person. So I don't think it would be he would think I'm pushing it. I just talked to him about it. He asked me, what medications do you take? I'm like, right now, none. He's like, so you're not taking your Vyvanse? I'm like, no, I quit that a while ago because I was having issues with it. And I've already talked to my doctor. I've already talked to I've already explained to her how I felt on it.
I'll ask you a question about your conversation with your doctor. So
Yeah,
that would be like a systems piece. That's where you would have come in contact. And I know, just from my own personal journey, when I was going through pain med, trying to establish pain medication stuff, I asked about cannabis use, and there's forms to fill out.
yeah,
And you had, like the doctor said, you go research and you fill out this form and you tell me what you think you need. Did
yeah.
you get that kind of reception from your doctor at that point of contact?
No, because when I started taking lion's mane, I did the research prior,
Mm-hmm.
and I told my doctor. that I'm taking this. It's helping me out. I've been taking it for the last so many months, and I've noticed a big significant change in my uh,
Thanks,
uh,
Progressive.
non-epileptic seizures because they
Mm-hmm.
had me on a medication that I was not supposed to be on, and that's a whole nother can of worms we'll get into another day. Um, so I don't trust the medication that they had me on for anti non-epileptic seizures because I don't want um that feeling I had because it's like, oh my God, like, it's just a whole thing. So I told her and she goes, if you've done your research and you know what works for you, I'm not gonna fault you for that. Keep doing that. So I'm like, okay, she's behind me. Now I can't actually partake in the smoking of certain like cannabis. I can't do that because I am bipolar. There's a whole thing that's with bipolar, but I can take gummies. And lion's mane is keeping me calm. It's keeping me together. I'm not losing my like. I'm not. I don't feel like I'm losing my mind. I'm not a zombie.
Do you
Like
know who
it's
Paul
just
Stamets is? Stamets?
no, I don't.
My son works in, let's call it the mushroom industry. But he works for him and a friend of his. They grow mushrooms and sell them to restaurants and at the farmers market. So I've had a lot of conversation about lion's mane particularly, and they make tinctures out of different mushrooms and the medicinal purposes within mushrooms. And I'm going to look up his name here. Uh, Sta- what-
I'm sorry, not trying to go like too much into detail. I just wanted to ask about that and how others feel about it, right? So I'm just
yeah.
trying to ask
But
questions.
bringing the conversation up, I want to talk about, but it's an opportunity to bring this piece of information in. Paul Stamets, he is a PhD by microbiologist and studies mushrooms for warfare needs, has been employed by the United States government, not Trump, by the United States government to use mushrooms
Psychothilibins?
in warfare. But he also, of course, he's it's about medicinal purposes as well, and it is a fascinating field of how pain relief can come, how mental health supports could be used um, through mushrooms. It's a conversation, much like gummies are a conversation. There is so many holistic approaches to helping with end of life care. Though I think when it comes right down to the crunch and the knuckles of it, our healthcare system is important to be there. If you need somebody who needs assistance for their choking while they're going through their last hours, or their pain relief that puts them almost in a coma so that they can manage how their organs are dying sort of one at a time, that's the systems piece that really functions well in my part of the world. And I live in a rural part of the world here in Canada. So I'm still grateful that our system is holding together for these kinds of things. People don't stop and think about those pieces, right? So end of life care it can, like I said, it can be a lot of traumatic conversations in a very short period of time when these urgent things are taking place. So hence the need I felt to come in and just talk about and encourage people to get out there and really, think about the
Yeah,
paperwork and who's going to do what. Like all of a sudden, like Marshy, all of a sudden, some sister from the background or sibling from the background steps up and they want to just run the show, right? And you've been running the show for 6 years, looking after your dad, so to speak. So I see those family problems. I've experienced helping to support all the different players within family systems that way. And the real easiest way to manage it is be prepared and get the documents signed. Get the
right,
documents signed. Have your dad, while he is capable of consent, give consent, right?
right. And then
I don't know where you live in British Columbia to get a
I live
power.
in Alberta.
you can get it done for between $300 and $400. Yeah, through what is it's not I don't know why the name of the like people who do power of attorneys, who do the signing off on mortgages and stuff, and how people, the notary public. Yeah, so notary publics can do all this kind of work, and it's way cheaper than going through a lawyer, right? And there's a certain amount of self preparation on the documents that will save you money along the way, right? And finding out who has the legal authority to sign off on your documents is part of the work, and I'm sure it's different in every province.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not like the one who takes care of my dad. My mom still takes care of my dad, but it's just me thinking of my dad not having to be in pain anymore. It's
Yeah,
just it's just a run-of-the-mill trial. If he doesn't like it, he doesn't like it. I'm not gonna force him. Like I said, um, it's up to him. Wholeheartedly, it's up to him what he wants to try. So,
right.
but
Right.
thank you very much for having me. I appreciate you guys. I'm gonna have to drop because
Coming
I'm
up in
doing.
talks. Um,
Yeah.
Beaver politics, as we grow our network and we start having these afternoon shows, and trying to find, where our audience is going to be, trying to, we have a small number, but, to me, when I was doing public, I would go and teach in a classroom, or I'd do a workshop, having 10 to 20 people in a room for an hour, gold, friggin' gold, right? Like, so the high numbers have never been, sort of sought after, but we're trying to find our community here for this conversation in amongst, like I said in my promo for this ad, the political is personal, and it's not always about the fucking tariffs, right? So these political pieces within our system, if we can help people to understand and come together, maybe, like if anybody ever, um, for instance, being a caretaker for somebody who, has Alzheimer's or dementia, a caretaker room where people are having the same lived experiences, that would be a great place. What kind of caregiving supports are in your community? I've been involved with Indigenous care support services where people, go out and harvest Devil's Club, and, or, do planting, or, do some, very cathartic, therapeutic, community building support systems around caregiving. All kinds of conversations can evolve out of end of care work. Um, of course, my experience working with seniors, finding support programs like Meals on Wheels, support programs where seniors can just get phone calls, where seniors could get companion services. Companion services is something that lacks in almost all long-term care facility. People are, how do you get somebody who has no supports, no family, no money? How do you get them to go to their mammogram or to get some kind of test at the hospital? Who's going to take them when they are, unable to take themselves? Where does the companion service come from? I'm just saying this, anybody who wants to start a side business, think about something like that. You need a business license for your vehicle, and you can transport people that have appointment needs within our long-term care facilities. And yeah, there's some money to be made at that. I operated a private social work business for a number of years, and that's definitely one of the services. I did transport a lot of patients. So we've lost Smarshy. I see she's dropped down. 10 people. Let's get the likes going. We still have, what is it? Okay, so we're trying to make the show 2 hours. If not enough people, I'll end it at an hour and a half. That's not bad. That's in 10 more minutes. Coffee and Research, thank you so much for joining. And Desiree, thank you so much. And, see if we can get the shares out there. Like I said, we're trying to find the audience, trying to know who's out there in these moments, who's there Thursday afternoon that we can grab and bring in for these kind of conversations, because it's not everybody's cup of tea, right? And there's a lot of volatile political conversation on the go right now. Wanted to offer something that's just a little more grounding, that just might give somebody a little more educational information. You know, you drop in here for 3 minutes and you learn about what a power of attorney is, and you learn that it's more than finances, that it also is about the medical decision-making structure. You go away with that piece of information in 30 seconds. You know, that's wonderful. That's what I love about TikTok. I love about these opportunities. So,
Yeah.
yeah, talking and research, I know you're going to contribute well to that.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I think people still, like the politics is not going to go away,
No.
right? We're still going to have politics no matter what. But I think, unfortunately, people prioritize what they're comfortable with instead of what they should be doing.
1000%. I think that there's a lot to demystify about some of the complexities of things like illness and death and things like that, and how that works within varying demographics as well too. There's cultural overtones to speak to. From a policy standpoint, at least a beginning to the conversation is a federal national caregiving strategy, where they are trying to take a bit of an intersectional approach. And if people are interested in the politics around that, with proroguing Parliament, there was a bit of a challenge. That obviously got walked back, but they're really kind of pushing to continue that conversation as we move forward. But that's what the the National Caregiver. Oh my gosh, it's something of excellence. I wrote it down, and now my aphasia is kind of kicking in. But basically, National Caregiving Center for Excellence. That's the word I'm looking for. Anyway, they are looking to spearhead that from the policy standpoint, and that is what's unique about them is they're taking a lifespan approach. So they bring in the pediatric disability community, but also senior care as well too, understanding that while they do have some different needs from either end of the spectrum, that there's a lot that unites us. But yeah, from a demystifying approach, that's another aspect that I do talk with a lot of parents in pediatric palliative care who, because of my own experience with the loss of my son, they're worried. They want this to go well. And, you know, as a caregiver and as a mom, you want to like chronically over plan things. And you just want it all to go right. But death doesn't do that sometimes. You know, death decides things on its own. When the body is done, the body is done. And so to bring some level of comfort, I've kind of been trying to share that experience as well too, in hopes that it helps some people feel a little bit more prepared, and kind of also find some people that they can put in their circle to help bring that comfort, and demystify what feels like a really intense subject, especially because no one likes to talk about the pediatric side of palliative care as well too. And so, yeah, on my end, I totally agree with you, Desiree. That's a big subject.
Can I ask you a question? And Lori, I'll get right to you. I appreciate you joining up in the box. This week, or maybe last week, I read an article about the disability tax credit, and that how people who live on like CPP, who are established as somebody with disability, how only like 25% of people are even applying for this disability tax credit. Do you know of anything shifting within the system to kind of get the word out there about this?
Sadly, no. Partially it was due to timing. So in 2018, there was a Senate report on the quality of the programming for the disability tax credit. Okay. And there was a fairly reasonable dialogue when it comes to Ottawa, and Ottawa is like really hugely public, but that one seemed to catch a lot of the media at the time. And then COVID happened, and then everything shifted and priorities shifted. And so in order to rectify that, part of the challenge is to really consider what the standard is for disability policy at a provincial level. And right now what we're seeing with intended clawbacks with some provinces with the new Canadian disability benefit, that access point is becoming even more um, filled with barriers along the way, if you will. So there is a need to consider how to remedy that, but at the same time, um, the disability policy piece is still sits very low on the priority scale in terms of that, despite the fact that that's another conversation that seems to make a lot of community uncomfortable, despite the fact that as human beings who live and breathe, we all have that possibility of becoming a part of that community at one point or another. I am myself in there, but so there's that number has not shifted since I think the last time I heard that confirmation in a paper was about 2016.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can I jump in real quick about that?
Absolutely.
From working in the clinic, the patient has to get through to that, like the doctor has to agree to sign these forms.
That's true.
And if the doctor doesn't feel that, which is really not up to the doctor, if the doctor doesn't feel that the person qualifies, then they won't sign the forms. And I've seen that in the clinics. And the other thing is, if you go from clinic to clinic to clinic and you don't have a regular doctor, there's no doctor that's going to sign those forms because they don't know your history. That is another big problem we have.
That's another systemic piece. You're asking somebody who doesn't know you to sign off that you'll never be able to work again for the rest of your life, right? So it's a huge responsibility for a doctor to put their name to paper that way. And so I can understand like through that lens, but the people with the disability tax credit that I was just talking about are people who are already established as having a disability. The doctor doesn't have to justify that part. This is about them then applying for a disability tax credit because they already have the disability established. So there's that group. I'm not saying there isn't a group out there that can just apply, but for the ones that already have CPP, right, are already established on a provincial disability status, those people are not applying for the disability tax credit. And it is sort of like, that's too bad because it's a $10,000 a year tax credit or somewhere about that. Don't quote me on the number. So it would be really interesting, you know, I hope people are listening. And if you're in that situation and you have CPP, if you have been, and I see Whitney, you have some, Whitney still has been, you mentioned you're rejected by CPP. But for people who have been accepted, this is, you know, nobody's more with information about the tax system. It's an underutilized program.
There's definitely a lot going on right now in terms of understanding the system as a whole and where those barriers lie. But seeing that implemented at a policy level is going to sadly be years before that happens. The average kind of time frame from seeing, say, something analyzed at a policy level to implementation, the shortest amount of time can be upwards of 6 years. The worst would be about 17, depending on what you're talking about.
You're in for the long haul on this one.
Absolutely.
Lori, thank you for joining the conversation. I'll give you the floor right now.
Okay. I've had a fair bit of experience with social workers, but first, let me talk about my mom, because my mom passed at the end of 2017. And my mother was a little bit sneaky. She had us running around. She had 4 daughters. She had 4 daughters and 1 son to advocate for, luckily. She had us running around looking at old age homes. And she did not want to go in a home. There was no way she wanted to go into a home. And, you know, it was just a little bit sneaky on her part. I remember driving I live close to Ottawa, to Montreal to take my 2 sisters with her to look at old age homes. And we had an appointment with someone who does that, an experienced professional. And we looked at them, we looked at maybe 5 homes. Then turns out that no, there's no way she wanted that. My youngest sister, fortunately, was able to take her in her home for 5 years, but it took a big toll on her. She was able financially to take vacations,
Right.
and we filled in for her. So I was able to see what it was like. I spent 2 weeks there at one point. I was exhausted. It is very tiring.
It is. It takes a real community, right? Like,
Yeah.
I got to be a part. My mom got to pass with dignity at home. There's 4 sisters. My dad, we all took turns doing all the nursing pieces, changing the bedding, making sure the meals, hygiening, entertaining, and trying to make memories and fond moments. And, there was a lot of medical stuff, so we had to keep charts of when we gave insulin and blood pressures and, the whole, but no one person could have done it all, even just lifts. I was doing home support. I'd been worked in home support for about 7 years, so I knew how to do the physical lifts to commode and stuff like that. Like, just a lot of stuff, a lot of the intimacy, the the the, the intimacy and the bond that's
Yeah.
created when you're hygiening your
Yes.
parent or any other person. The amount of I tell you, I have immense respect for that particular kind of care. Feral Gremlin, mad respect for Feral Gremlin and what she has given to community through her work experience, and anybody who takes the time to do that kind of care. Um, it can be a wonderful bonding to know that you made another human being um, feel supported through something that intimate. It is, yeah, I must say it's a motivating experience for me, even if I don't know the person. But if you do, you want to talk about some layers of bonding, is when that is what's, you're helping someone bathe, shower, get dressed. Yeah, up close and personal. So
Yeah.
politics is. I think what I'm going to do. It's because it's 2:30 now,
Yeah.
and there's 8 of us in the room. It might be a time to kind of wind it down.
Okay.
But I'm not going to cut anybody short. So I want to give everybody opportunity to. And if you need 10 minutes, 15, 20, you take it.
Can I finish maybe a little bit? Because what was unusual with her, my mom was born in Quebec. She lived there all her life, but she died in Ontario because my youngest sister knew she was dying. We all knew. And she could not face the thought of having her die at home. So what we did was we moved her from Montreal to Ottawa, where my oldest sister and brother-in-law still live. And she lived with them for the last few years of her life. And she died in their home. Now, my mom was taken care of with so much love, and we were always there to support her, especially in the hospital, because when you're an old person, you get pushed around. My mom was all of 5 feet, like she was little. She had a big voice, though. She was a tough French Canadian. However, when you're sick, you don't have that voice all the time. They don't listen to you. So I remember sitting with her for hours and hours in the hospital, just making sure the nurses were taking proper care of her, because that's something I could do. I have that experience with my daughter, and I was used to it. My brother-in-law couldn't do it. But the hospitals don't want old people. They want you to take them in, get them treated for something specific, and get them out of there as quickly as possible because you're tying up their beds.
Correct. And this is understanding the system and being able to, like, sometimes we feel so, like, literally ashamed of the lack of care. But knowing our system is there to flip people like that, right? So they are symptomatic driven, and my loved one will be processed in a hospital system. Now, most of the nursing, like all of the staff usually are making that process as easy as possible. The odd time you get a cranky person, but it isn't very often, at least in the experiences that, I shouldn't say that. I've got lots of stories, but if you get some good support staff, that helps you work through that system. But the hospitals, absolutely, they are flipping beds.
Yes.
They got a number of people lined up in emergency that are waiting for those beds. And if there is, and so what they do, and they do this in the social work department, once the patient leaves, that's why it's like never leave without being discharged and stuff. Once a person leaves, that's it. End of relationship, end of story, right? So if they can move people along quickly, they don't have these relationships to be responsible for after the symptomatic piece is treated, right? That moves on to whatever the next piece of the system is, but it's not their piece. And sometimes when people, and I've seen like hospitals step in, they're not kicking, they will keep people in, they should be in long-term care, but there's no bed in long-term care. So they keep them in the hospital. And it's not the best place for a person to be kept, because long-term care offers much better services for somebody, say, experiencing dementia. But I have seen people spend 6-8 months in hospital because there's no bed available in long-term care. Yeah.
Well, my mom was almost 95. She still had her faculties. Lucky for her. I'm hoping to be like her. I don't know. Some days I'm pretty tired today. Actually, my granddaughters threw me for a loop yesterday. They were kind of getting into it, pulling each other's hair and doing silly things like girl stuff. And it just exhausts me now. I'm in the position where my daughter is looking after me. But I've looked after her.
Ability as well, or?
Well, I've had my knee replaced. I had my right hip replaced. Okay. Now, after over a year of physio, exercising and dropping 50 pounds purposely so I could relieve the arthritic pain because I was in so much pain. Right. I've decided, I went to see my surgeon in January. I couldn't get in. Went to see my family doctor. She picked up the phone within 3 minutes. She had an appointment. But my family doctor has been my doctor for 30 years. Like, she helps me zip up my coat because most people know I shake a lot. And that's not something that's going to kill me. But I'm 72. I have to think about my future. I have a will in place. I have a DNR.
Okay.
But I'm having trouble finishing the steps. I don't know what it is. I've been retired for 10 years. There's no excuse.
What steps are you concerned about?
I need to give my son banking information. Yeah, the basic stuff that he needs to know as executor, because he's going to be my executor. And bear in mind, he also helps me. If I need him, he's right here. But I'm in a very different position now, and it's weird. I can't walk very far. I need to use a cane. I can barely go very far. My car is broken right now. I need to buy a new car. My son is going to take me, but he has his own business and he works 7 days a week. My daughter drives, but we don't have a car. So we're looking into renting a car. There is other options, so we're doing that. But it's been stressful. I've been stuck in the house for 3 weeks now. And I'm starting to go a little cuckoo. I
Yeah.
really am. I'm an outdoor person. So,
Isolation's a factor, right? And but I'll tell you, as your hesitancy in getting your documents,
yes,
uh, for whatever reasons, there's layers to your conversation here, but
yes,
um,
there's
know
layers.
this, that like, well, if you were to, something happened and the paperwork wasn't done, it takes almost a full 2 years for an escrow to process, where your son would then be giving complete privilege to the courts to access your bank accounts and stuff like that. So getting your power of attorney organized so that
I
he has
know.
access to those accounts,
Yes,
that could happen immediately, so that he's able to move forward immediately after you pass away. And the DNR thing, if it's already established,
it
where
is.
is that established? That's with your doctor, right?
Well, actually, no. I went through my notary in Quebec, where I live.
So your notary. Okay, great.
The notaries do it. It's a cheaper, and they do mortgages. They do everything in Quebec. And
Yes.
also, all our wills are with the Notary Society. So if he needs a copy of my will, it doesn't matter if my house burns down. It's always registered at that central place.
Are you sure it's not done? Because it's sort of like horse and cart scenario. Because if you've got your medical piece done, would the financial piece not have been a part of that conversation?
Well, she told me, the notary, and I remember very well, you just need to give your son your bank account numbers. Although my daughter has my cards, access to my cards. She does all the shopping because I live 5 minutes from the mall. She does all the shopping, so I guess it wouldn't be that hard.
Well, but the power of attorney is going to be going to the bank, to the physical bank,
Yes.
when you're passed away, to say, I now control what comes in and out of this account. And say maybe you've got a couple $1,000s sitting in a bank account. If you do not give that power to your son or daughter, then the bank, the courts will step in and they will freeze that money until that process is done through, I think it's escrow, right? And it's usually about a 2-year process. But I bet anybody, like, it kind of sounds like that part may be done for you. Might be go revisit those documents, and it's only only a couple lines that says he has authority. It's not like you put your bank account numbers or anything in that document specifically.
No, maybe it's legally done, but this may not be legal. But I always tell my daughter, if I have $500 in my checking account, you go in there and you get it. I'm sorry, but this is my mentality. I say, you go in there and you get it. Because otherwise, you're right, it's frozen. And I know that. My mom told me that. My mom was incredibly smart. I don't know. I wish she'd passed more of that on to me. But
I hope you have the genetics of the family side that lives to 95. I too have a family. My mom's side all passed away really early, 50s, 60s. My dad, 90s, right? So I'm going for dad's side of the family.
you look well.
Do you have any? Sorry, Lori. Did
Okay.
good job, but want to give Desiree an opportunity as well.
Yes.
Because it's quarter to 2.
I love Desiree. Her and I are buddies.
I know I'm just getting to know who both of you are as of late, because I've, just been, back in gear with the Beaver politics here for the last, I want to say 6 weeks now. So, there's just a lot of people to get to know, and you're wonderful people. I've enjoyed listening to your conversation and other shows. I really enjoy when you join Jana's conversation on Saturday mornings. And of course, Desiree, I met you with the feminist conversation. I did a video. I don't know if you ever, I didn't tag you in it because I didn't have permission. I think you and Lori may have been in the same room with me that day, but I did a video where I thanked you for your conversation on that. And it was sort of like my main takeaway from the last Beaver Politics show. So just to give you a little heads up, you might want to.
Yeah, I didn't see that. I just wanted to. So my husband, his mother passed away, and then his father passed away like 6 months later.
Okay.
And he had a will. The will was written when my husband, who was the oldest, was a baby.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Was never updated because it said all of my children. So he didn't really have to update that. So what happened was all four of them, it was going to probate, right? Because there was property and there was assets and there was bank accounts and so all four of them had to decide who was going to be the executor
Mm-hmm.
amongst them. And we live in Alberta, so my husband just backed out of that. And the other three, one is like the main, the other two were helping him, kind of thing.
Right.
And the probate, so father-in-law died in February of 2023. Taxes had to be done, and I believe his mother's taxes had to be done, which wasn't done. And if you have to deal with Revenue Canada, it's not going to be quick.
No.
So now we've passed the 2-year mark, and everything's still sitting in probate. It's when it's more complicated, it's going to take longer.
It does. And 2 years can seem like forever. And if there's ways that we can, just bring awareness so people can kind of get a little more prepared, I think that's great. I hope that message has gotten out there to somebody somewhere here in TikTok land today.
Yeah,
Thank you.
it's just do as much as you can while you can to alleviate the burden of your children.
Mhm.
And going back to what I had said earlier, it's about empowering the people like our parents and giving them that power to make those decisions while they can.
It's a
You
gift,
know,
isn't it? And bringing your awareness to them, that's really great. I mean,
yeah,
obviously, you care deeply for, and respect
well,
in
yeah,
that journey.
my mother took care of all of that when I was in my 30s. So, there's that. But I'm at the point like, okay, we need to do our wills, and take care of this stuff. And my husband is rather nonchalant about it. He said, but everything's going to go to you anyway. But that's not the point.
Nope, it doesn't matter in the long run if you're waiting years for it to happen, right? So, step in and try to avoid that for
And it's,
your
yeah,
own.
we're married and my name is also on the house. That's the other thing too that people need to understand. They bought a house. Is it just your husband's name on the house? You need to have your name added to that deed as well.
Oh, there are so many pieces like that around property.
Yep.
Lots of pieces around property.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it may not seem like anything,
You
but
know,
it's
I'd
a
love
big
to do a
deal.
show on financial abuse of seniors and the Criminal Code of Canada, how that is handled, what happens at the banking level, some of the ways to protect through the power of attorney and stuff like that. You just kind of triggered some thoughts on that with both of these conversations, with everybody today, because, we it is just a gift if you have that knowledge to be able to give to somebody else. And to have, sometimes we find out that family members have watched people drain bank accounts to the tune of 20, 30, 40 thousands of dollars. And it really, it really hurts. So I think I'll end up taking another direction from the conversation from this show today. And I'm going to shut it down because I gotta go to the washroom super bad. I've been here shaking here for an hour, being patient. So I appreciate, like I said, I appreciate you coming up onto the show, both of you. I look forward to seeing you again in the other rooms. Before I end the show tonight, or this afternoon, I want to put a plug for tonight's show with Mrs. Radical and Frontline. They'll be doing Truth and Discourse, and it'll be about how to handle conversations politically. It's politically driven. Tomorrow's show is with Pixie Lee. She does a historical perspective. We have a debate show on Friday night. Radical's here. Jan is here Saturday morning with mental health, and Radical Saturday night. And he also runs a political conversation that's based on, what motivates people, understanding where they come from, whatever region, culture, the religion pieces in their lives. Very interesting show. We have a new show on Sundays, the Damn Happy Show, which is about how people support themselves with, how they attain their happiness. And so it's that simple. What do you do for self-care? Different things. And then Monday is Indigenous Matters. Tuesday's a weekly hour news show, and the Progressive Moose on Wednesday. A back east perspective, and a very much conversation driven on capitalism. So there it is. I've said it all in a nutshell. Going to end the live, and thank you again. Have a good few hours, and see you in cyberspace fairly soon, I'm suspecting.
Have a good afternoon.
Bye.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.